On the podcast, Kāinga Ora flicks Tainui almost 20 properties for just $10 million. They never hit the open market, never got offered to all Kiwis, and now Tainui is selling them well below cost, but to iwi members only. State houses built through the hard graft, sweat, tears and dollars of all our grandparents decades ago. But if you're non-Māori, or not Māori, you're not particular this iwi, the government locks you out. And then the iwi locks you out as well. Those are the facts. Fair? Well, you can answer that. If anything screams we've created a divided, split in two New Zealands, then this is it. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan, Garner.
G'day, good evening. Welcome to Duncan, Garner, Editor-in-Chief. Thanks for your company. Please subscribe if you can. You can text my name, Duncan, to 3598 and I'll flick you a link and it helps keep us here. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support. Tonight, the sweetheart housing deal between Kāinga Ora and Tainui under their treaty clause called Right of First Refusal. Kāinga Ora has flicked almost 20 houses in South Auckland and the Waikato to Tainui for just $10 million. No other buyers were welcome, no tender, no open market, no competition. Backdoor, backroom handshake stuff, under the treaty. That's the deal they did. And now they've been flicked on by Tainui to iwi members only. Pākehā, you're not welcome, you're not included. Is this the way to bring New Zealand together? I don't know. Hardly looks like it. Does this drive division in the name of increasing Māori home ownership? Yep. Will Tainui pay a flipping tax under the Bright Line test? Let's wait and see. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Imagine being a hard-working young Kiwi family. First kid, second on the way. Hard-working but low income, saving hard, doing all the right things to get on the property ladder. Then you see a house for sale, a former state house. It's an ad there, and it's priced in the 400,000. Suddenly your eyes light up and you say to the missus, we can do this. We can afford a house with that sort of price tag. We've saved, we work, and we're budget conscious. This is us. Except it's not. You're not welcome, not invited. Not part of this cosy club because you're not Māori. Because the people selling it are the local iwi who bought it under a first right of refusal offer from the government's Kāinga Ora housing agency, which is a long-standing deal that they had under their treaty settlement, which only recently Kāinga Ora has started to trigger. So Kāinga Ora packages up a bunch of houses in South Auckland and the Waikato. It says to the iwi, which is Tainui, you fellas want this? And Tainui says, yep, and they agree to sell almost 20 properties to Tainui for $10 million. That's under the market value. We're not even tested by the market, not tested by competing interest or by tender, anything. Just, here we go. Until now, the first right of refusal deal has only been used once, but Kāinga Ora, it seems, is starting to do more of this. Recently, a Wellington iwi got a huge set of apartments, huge number of apartments for $1 million, and they sold it weeks later to a developer for $3 million. It's all totally legal under their treaty settlements, their deal where the government has effectively locked out a huge section of New Zealand from getting access to these cheap houses. Will this ruffle feathers? Yeah, of course. Does the government want you to know? Probably not. They'd probably prefer it all under the radar because quite clearly the government agreed process promotes two New Zealands, Māori here and non-Māori over there. Now, Māori home ownership is lower than other New Zealanders, so the government argues this is one way, perhaps, of getting it up. That's the deal that they struck. But it's an expensive way to do it because it comes at great social cost to the nation. It divides us. Pākehā get a bit funny about this. It creates and drives two New Zealands. And the Pākehā said, well, I want some of that. Well, you can't have it. And here's where the argument falls over. Surely you can get Māori home ownership up without punishing everyone else by locking them out of the process. Our grandparents built and paid for these houses, and they never expected them to be sold exclusively in the future to just one particular race of New Zealanders, did they? And besides, Pacifica home ownership is actually lower than Māori, so imagine how they feel about all this. Locked out, and the houses they perhaps can afford are not even on the market for them. How does that help their families? It doesn't. It probably feels really unfair and unjust to them. Let's call it what it is. It's racism. It's spinning it on race. Because it clearly promotes one race over everybody else. And if it was on genuine need, surely you'd just use income levels. But this is purely on race. This is being allowed in New Zealand under the deal that the national government struck 30 years ago with the iwi. But it's really only kicking in now, certainly getting publicity now. As iwi fortunes rise, they're in a position to buy these houses in bulk deals using money given to them by taxpayers decades ago. And as their wealth increases, they've got more flexibility. It's under Chris Luxon's government that Kāinga Ora has done these two housing transactions lately. Luxon, despite making noises about ending these sorts of divisive deals, has done no such thing because he can't. It's a treaty right. He actually can't at all. He never could. Any suggestion by National they'd get on top of these sorts of things, it was pure political opportunism and naivety. It amounts to a backroom handshake deal where the rest of us are locked out and Kāinga Ora and Tainui agree on a price which is not tested by the open market and the houses are not offered to any other New Zealanders in any way. So the iwi buy them, offer them to iwi members only for a set price below at all cost. Some houses are being sold for tens of, or if not hundreds of thousands of dollars below registered valuation. Good on Tainui. They're not even making money out of this. They're making sure that their people get into houses. That's really honourable. But is this a good use of taxpayer asset? Are we getting maximum price for it as taxpayers? And who gets the privilege nowadays anyway? All this makes ordinary New Zealanders shake their heads and mutter, are you kidding me? Kāinga Ora, the government's housing agency, the outfit that's supposed to help all New Zealanders, quietly sells off 18 ex-state homes for $10.3 million. Not on the open market, not to first home buyers, not to any hard-working Kiwi who's been smashed by interest rates and the soaring rents. No, you're over there. This is iwi only. We've carved this off. We've carved it off. They're flogged off wholesale to Waikato Tainui, who then flips them exclusively to iwi members. They're probably not making much money out of this, if any. But if you're not in the tribal role, congratulations, you never had a chance. The door wasn't just closed, it was welded shut. These homes are being resold as is whereas. There's no grand upgrades, there's no magical fixes, no multi-million-dollar refits or rebuilds, just a conveyor belt. Crown land, iwi purchase, iwi only sale. This isn't righting historic wrongs, it creates new ones. This isn't reconciliation, it's a housing policy being run like a backstage VIP club with a bouncer at the door asking for your card that says whakapapa. While thousands of state houses are being cancelled or demolished, Kāinga Ora is quietly offloading the ones that do exist, and instead of putting them back into the hands of all New Zealanders, they're funneling them into a closed loop. Try explaining that to the young Pākehā couple I mentioned earlier on in this podcast. Earning a combined, say, 110k who can't crack the market, or the Indian family who's been renting for 17 years, or the Pacifica mum working 2 jobs, or literally anyone else who doesn't tick the right ancestry box. I think it's wrong. I do. Tell them the house that they might have afforded for $499,000 never hit the market because they weren't allowed to buy it. And here's the part that really grinds the gears. Government agencies are selling public assets at volume in a housing crisis, and the public doesn't get to compete. So the public is shut out of a process to buy houses. No auction, no tender, no transparency, just a quiet side door deal and a sorry not for you sign slapped across the front gate. Sorry, are you iwi? Across the front gate. If you're iwi, come on in. If you're not, out. How is this housing policy fair? How is it socially equitable? How is this anything other than structurally locking out thousands of Kiwis who are already struggling? Pākehā struggle too. Indians struggle too. Pacifica struggle too. They're all Kiwis. Now, if this were happening in reverse, if the government was selling houses to non-Māori only, the country would explode, and rightly so. But when the exclusion runs the other way, it's purely just the sound of crickets. Just, you've heard them before. You've heard it before. This is not about attacking Māori. It's about attacking bad policy that slices the country into two, as insiders and outsiders, at a time when we desperately need unity and shared opportunity. If we want a fair, functioning modern New Zealand where ordinary people get a fair shot at the roof over their heads, then these quiet carve-outs and backroom disposals, they've got to stop. But how do you overturn an already negotiated and agreed legal treaty deal? The government tells Kāinga Ora to stop offering these deals. Can they do that? But if we find out about that, they'll be straight to court. It's why this right of first refusal was always going to cause problems down the track, division and exclusion. And the problem here, the government agreed to this measure decades ago and they locked it in. And all it's doing is entrenching 2 New Zealanders. It's not fixing a housing crisis. That's the real scandal. It is not fixing any housing crisis.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, our panel, Ashley Church and Rawdon Christie, they join me now, guys. G'day, let's kick it off with this. Good to see you.
Yes, welcome. Good to see you guys. You're not looking very summery. Oh, you are actually. Actually, yeah, you've relaxed a bit.
Relaxed.
Are you still on the clock? You still on the clock, Duncan?
Well, I'd like to divert things here to Ashley, who's got a massive bit of blood on his forehead, and people will be wondering what's happened to him. Someone's clocked him. Someone's clocked that. They don't like his views.
I was, well, it could have been that actually because I have no memory of it. I was out yesterday working, came inside, checked my blood pressure, and the next thing you knew I was on the floor and all this. So I don't know what I did to myself. But yeah. So if I don't remember your names or anything we're talking about, that's why.
It's because you don't drink. I'll tell you what, you don't worry about it if you drink because you just assume that's why you pass out or why you can't remember. But yeah. Oh, well, sorry to hear that, Ash.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Merry Christmas and all that.
Yeah. So. Hey, it might be Merry Christmas for a few people from Tainui. This is the deal that Tainui and a first right of refusal. They got a bunch of houses from Kāinga Ora, 10 houses, 20 houses, $10 million, and now they're flicking them onto their own people. Nice if you can get it. Good that it's part of the treaty settlement, but if you're a non-New Zealander who's working hard and you're a New Zealander and would like to buy those things yourself, you're cut out. What do you guys make of it? Ash, you start.
I'm going to start. Yeah, so I have absolutely no problem with this, guys, and I'll tell you why. So this is something called Right of First Refusal. So it's part of the settlement that was negotiated with Tainui way back when that settlement was first settled some years ago. If you take the racial aspect out of it, if you take the iwi aspect out of it and simply look at it on a commercial basis, it is a part of the deal. It's a deal that says that when the government divests itself of social housing, that it must give first right to iwi as part of its treaty settlement. And let me just remind everybody that those treaty settlements settled at 4 cents on the dollar, which was an extraordinarily generous concession by iwi at the time. It's also the formula that's applied to all other treaty settlements going forward. So the country actually could have done much, much worse out of that than it did. Then if we look at the deals themselves, the iwi could have profiteered off this and could have sold these at extraordinary cost back into the market. They didn't. They've sold them basically for what they cost them to the beneficiaries of the iwi. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think that's fantastic. I think that from the country's perspective, it's a really good outcome. And this is just an example of what I see as a commercial deal working the way it should have done.
Yeah, it's not commercial though, is it though, Rawdon? Because it is. Well, is it because it's not a tendered process? There's nothing commercial about it. It's a backroom deal.
Well, there are two parts of it. Sorry, Ash. There are two parts of it which are commercial. One is the fact that it does seem unlike possibly the deal. So the problem is that deal done in Wellington, where the iwi made $2 million in 2 weeks or something, buying the apartments for $1 million and selling for $3 million, having probably already pre-organised the purchase. So that's different. In this situation, I do think that that the properties have been sold under the established rules, whereby there's a registered valuation done that's guiding the price, and I don't think iwi has necessarily got away with paying less than that. So I think it has followed the rules with KO sales, and likewise, they're not giving them away; they're selling them again, sort of on the open market, as long as you're within the iwi. So I don't really mind it too much. And when it comes to the prices, I don't know about Hamilton, but I did check out in the puppet. So there was one 2-beddie in Papakura on their list of which they're selling at $735. Now Barfoot and Thompson has got about 14 odd 2-bedroom properties for sale down in Papakura. 6 of them have got a price on them, and those prices range from $575 to $650. $650 is the most being asked for it. Now, admittedly, these are not coming with a lot of land, and the only one with any sort of substantial bit of land is about $640K. But that price of $735, even if it's got a full site, it doesn't seem as though they're giving it away.
No, I think they're moving them at cost, aren't they?
Wants to get the money
they're moving them at cost, actually, right?
Yeah, they are. And just to come back to your point about not being commercial, it's absolutely commercial. But the commercial element of it was the deal that was done when the treaty settlement was signed with Tainui. So that's the commercial aspect. And I remind you again, guys, and anybody who's viewing this, 4 cents on the dollar. 4 cents on the dollar. Iwi could have really pushed on this and could have said, no, we want 10, we want 20, whatever. 4 cents on the dollar. It was an extraordinarily generous concession. It's been a concession that's been carried forward in other agreements. I have no difficulty with this at all. I think. What if you're
a young Pākehā family? You've got one kid, one on the way, and you're looking at these houses for sale, as we say, for cost. Pretty good price, I suppose, if you're looking at some of them. And you can't access them because you're white, because you're Pākehā, because you don't have that right or that privilege. Ring Rawdon.
Ring Rawdon. Seriously, there is so much stock on the market. Now, Duncan, you'd have an absolute valid point if it wasn't for the fact there is so much choice on the market, that the borrowing rates have now got to a sort of a workable level, and that everything is lined up to allow the very demographic you're talking about access to the property market. The properties are there. Admittedly, it may not be that one on the corner which they've always set their heart on, which has got the larger section, but it's not as if we've got a real short supply. There are properties on the market. There is choice out there. And as I said, if you want a 2-beddie in Papakura, it's $575 up to $650. That's for a new build.
021. Andrew Costa, I thought he was interesting the way he fronted for Jack Tame over the weekend. Ashley, here he is, putting his case. He clearly wants to work again in the public service, doesn't he?
Yeah, so this is this whole issue around how much Costa and his ilk allowed the minister to know back when he was in the role with police versus how much he should have let them know. So I've looked at this whole issue, knowing we were going to discuss this, and there's kind of an element of Yes Minister in this. In that, if you ever watch Yes Minister, which was a brilliant British comedy from back in, I think, the 80s, it was that the whole premise of the show was this idea that the public service basically only told their ministers what they needed to know. Because the public service was eternal and ministers came and went. And so there's a big issue that's erupting at the moment over what Costa is telling the public he had told ministers and the Public Service Commission, and what those people are saying in reply. So, for example, he's saying that that the Deputy Public Services Commissioner Heather Baggott was told about what had been going on, the issues that were going on within the police, that Hipkins had been told and Mitchell had been told, Mitchell, the new minister. All three of them deny it. All three of them deny that he had actually told them that of the various different issues that were going on at the top level of the police. And so now he's coming out and basically doubling down. So for me, it doesn't really matter whether he wants a job back in the public service or not. He's destroyed his credibility. So if it was one minister or one person saying this, you could say it's a case of one versus the other, but it's not. It's all three of them all sing from the same song.
Rawdon?
And what's interesting here is that two of those, I mean, obviously the Mark Mitchell one was all about whether he'd accessed the emails being sent through to his political offices, his electorate office and his parliamentary office. That's where he says he didn't get the information from Costa. The other two were apparently conversations in passing. Which date back sort of 2 or 3 years. Those conversations in passing, that's why Costa's got no record of this. He's saying that, look, it was mentioned when they were vetting McSkimming for the role, that he'd mentioned the fact there had been an affair, that it had got ugly, that the wife knew, that the person who the lover had got angry and had been sent countless emails. Now, it may be, in Costa's defence, that he's mentioned in the back of the car, as he said, when he's travelling through
it can easily happen
with Chris Hipkins. Yeah. He may well have said, "Oh, look, just to be aware of the fact, look, McSkimming, he's a top guy. Just be aware of the fact, look, he had an affair, it got a little bit messy, but this is the right guy for the job." That may have been the conversation.
It can easily happen.
So for me, guys, the real issue here isn't so much what's happened here within the police and with Costa. It's the bigger issue of how much should the higher echelons of any government department tell their minister. And my view is really simple. The minister, when something goes wrong, it's almost always the minister that carries the can. And often carrying the can means they've actually got to resign. So based on that criteria,
refer upwards.
Tell them everything.
Always.
Absolutely refer upwards.
Totally. No surprises. There's a no surprises.
And keep a record of it as well.
There's always a no surprises policy in government. I mean, and Clark brought this in. Helen Clark brought this in. If you stuffed with her, then you were going to cop it. That stayed in place under Key as well, and I think it's still in place now. Actually, I think it's still in place. The no surprises. You do not blindside people with this stuff. You tell them it straight up.
Yeah, and also, I don't believe that Andrew Costa, as police commissioner, would have been so naive to have not kept a record of important conversations. It just isn't. It's incalculable, unless the entire process at that upper end was pretty slack and slovenly. Now, I just want to come back to something you said, Ashley, about where does Costa go from here? Something you asked about, Duncan. I'm completely with you on this, because I cannot believe that somebody who spends 3 or 4 weeks in his job, suspended from his job, while he waits for the outcome of the report to find out how much he's accountable for, and then he steps down, saying, "I take full responsibility." Well, I can't trust you based on the fact you didn't take full responsibility 3.5 weeks ago. You were waiting to see what the fallout was like. That alone, and he was just simply waiting to check that there was no allegation of corruption in that report. There wasn't. He stepped down, but at least he could say, we weren't corrupt and we've been found not to be corrupt. That, to me, says you didn't really take full responsibility. You should have gone on day one and said, I cannot continue in a public service environment or a public service role.
How old would Costa be? Because I'm assuming he's in his mid-50s.
No, he's not.
So
he's younger than he looks.
He's early 50s. Yeah. 50?
Okay. So he's got to find another job, and I guess he's recognising that's probably only going to be in the public service. So I'd imagine that's where this is coming from.
I wonder if we should go further and say, when a new government takes over, there's a whole lot of faces that may not fit. How do you deal with that? Because I mean, what they did with Costa, they had to move him sideways into the equally paid job of $670K as head of this social development agency, whatever it is, and yet the government didn't want him anywhere near anything, really, to be honest. They were much,
Well, that's what they're doing. That's what happens in the States.
Sure.
So senior appointments are political, and so when a new administration comes in, the old guard goes out and the new guard comes in. I don't know that we want to go there. I prefer the British system where the public service is agnostic. The problem is it hasn't always been agnostic, and that's where you get this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Rawdon, do you have a take on that?
Look, I still can't. I genuinely cannot move beyond the fact that somebody says I take full responsibility, yet they didn't take full responsibility when they knew the full extent. This is the point. When they knew the full extent of McSkimming's offending. This isn't about a guy, I thought it was just an affair which went nasty and we got lots of emails. This is after knowing that the person who you have backed has got child sexual exploitation charges and bestiality charges against him. At that point, you say, "Jeepers, I've got to take full responsibility. I backed him. I'm out." But
Listen,
anyway,
I think sometimes the meaning of something means the opposite. I take full responsibility means I take absolutely no responsibility. I've often wondered that. I'm off now to spend more time with my family. No, you're not. This is your way out. I don't know. Your politician of the year, Ashley.
My politician of the year is going to surprise you guys. So there are a couple of candidates that I could have looked at. I could have considered Chris Bishop, who I think's done an extraordinary job in the various portfolios that he holds. I could have considered Erica Stanford, who toward the latter end of the year has very much emerged as an outstanding minister and somebody who I expect to see even greater things from over the next few years. Do you know who my minister of the year is? Chris Luxon. And I'll tell you why before you.
I'm not swallowing coffee. No.
Yeah. He's held together a three-party coalition that's been under constant stress over treaty issues, crime, a whole lot of cost of living stuff. He's managed to maintain, and okay, it's not stratospheric at the moment. He's polling a lot closer to Labor than I would like, but he's managed to keep the support of the coalition and the National Party up during a really difficult time in the country's history. He's pushed through a whole lot of, and we forget this, he's pushed through a whole lot of, or his ministers have, reversals of Labor policy, fair pay agreements, three waters replacement. There's a whole range of good stuff which has been overwhelmed by some of the other things that have been going on. So look, is he perfect? No, he's not. Is he John Key or Helen Clark? No, he's not. But I actually think he's done an okay job. And I'm increasingly coming to the view that I'm more and more comfortable with him leading us into the next election.
Rawdon.
Well, I'm pleased you're comfortable with that, because I think we've definitely now we've got to December, have got to the point at which that you just can't change that now, unless there's some major reason, in which case it's stuffed anyway. So I will pick up one of your other two, and that will be Erica Stanford. But this is only because I will continue to beat the drum of education being the cornerstone of a successful, thriving, economic growing nation. And I think what she's done consistently throughout is she's not only put forward policy change, she's seen it through. And to see so much policy change, and if you think about where she's gone on curriculum reform, we know that the student performance data is lifting, funding of new teachers, retention of present staff, infrastructure investment, attendance rates, even tiny little things like reversing uni fees from being first year to third year, which I think is a really sensible. Everything she's stood up and said she wants to do, she's delivered on. And I think when you rank, as I do, the basics of education being at the cornerstone of a successful society, then you have to take your hat off. And by the way, it goes beyond just education with what she's done. She just genuinely doesn't seem to have put a foot wrong when she's controlling one of the highest, one of the most scrutinized ministries there is.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to argue that, both your points actually. I'm going to go a step differently, and I've got joint winners, and I've gone for Luxon. And I'm the guy who's attacked him probably more than anyone. And I also going to put Hipkins in there. And because of this, Hipkins lost an election. He still survives. He's equal neck and neck with this guy. And people are talking about him possibly winning the next election. Luxon, everyone says can't win the next election. He's still there. They're both survivors. They're both, this guy Luxon's a first termer. He's done one term and he's kept this government together with one of the most cunning political operators in New Zealand history. That's Peters. And then Hipkins, who has the knives of the Labour Party everywhere around him, and he survived it. Those two guys win on the basis they're still there. And that's success, I think. Ashley, in this current environment.
I was just thinking it's your Christmas gift, ho ho ho. But but you're absolutely right, and it's interesting because it took that question for me to actually stand back and say who really has performed. Yeah, and Rawdon's right. I mean, Stanford's been outstanding. She's been stunning, and I expect even better next year. But if you look at pure mongrel in the political sense of that word and keeping in there, I hadn't thought about Hipkins, but you're absolutely right. Two people who all of the money would have been against surviving 6 to 12 months ago, both of whom are still there, both of whom are likely to lead their respective parties into the election. I don't want Hipkins in that role, but I respect what he's achieved in the time that he's been in that leadership.
Do you have a moment of the year?
Well, I was just going to say, to back up your criteria for Politician of the Year, hasn't Winston won it for the last 25?
Yeah, I think so.
And continues to?
Last 40, sorry.
And he's probably... Yeah, that's right. He is linked to my moment of the year, and this probably correlates a little bit with what you were both just saying, and that is to see. I genuinely thought that we're going to see fireworks with the Deputy Prime Minister changeover.
Yeah.
I thought something was going to go horribly wrong. To acknowledge the fact that the arrangement was installed, is it unprecedented?
Yes.
I think it is. To acknowledge the fact that it was actually done in a way which made all three parties look like grown-ups, and to acknowledge the fact that they didn't really open the door for any blatant criticism. I think the sharing of the Deputy Prime Minister role and the handing over is probably one of my political moments of the year, and that's when you're putting it alongside treaty reform here and goodness knows what else. But I do think that's something which possibly we have to celebrate.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's really smart. I like. Now that could go a step further to sharing the Prime Minister's role, couldn't it? In a year's time, we just don't know. MEP can throw up all sorts of things. Ashley, your moment?
Oh, no question for me, but by miles ahead of anything else, Winston Peters in his position on Palestinian statehood. So the against a backdrop, an international backdrop of virtue signalling by government after government after government, all claiming we needed a Palestinian state right now. Winston took, and against my criticism of him prior, I might add, Winston took the principled decision. He recognised that there isn't a mechanism in place right now by which to achieve Palestinian statehood. He refused to reward Hamas for terrorism and for baking in basically the obscenities over the last couple of years. He separated humanitarian compassion from constitutional recognition, and he actually believed that New Zealand should have an independent foreign policy and not just go along with all of the other players. It was a stunning move. I think I made the comment at the time that it may well have delivered my vote to New Zealand first. We'll see how the next 12 months goes. But for me, by far and away, not just in New Zealand, but one of the most principled political moves on the globe over the last 12 months.
I want to comment on that because I haven't said much about that sort of stuff. It was a very, very clever, sophisticated statement. And I thought, when I saw that, I thought, this is going to stand the test of time for some reason, which I don't know yet, and it did.
Yep.
And it was very clever. And that shows you 40 years of experience in the game, I reckon.
Totally.
Yeah. My moment is
my only comment on that. I was just going to say my only comment on that is it also showed up recent foreign ministers for they were in their ineptitude compared to how Winston appears on the world stage. Yeah. Sorry, Duncan, what's your moment?
Winston Mahuta. Winston compared to Mahuta. It's just like chalk and cheese. My moment is Seymour. I don't give it to Seymour. When he came down to the House, he'd negotiated a deal with the government to strip $13 billion from pay equity, and the government came down and did it in 24 hours. They took out $13 billion from future budgets. Stunning, and they largely got away with it. And Labor screamed and moaned, but then we realised you couldn't compare an air aviation officer with someone from the kindergarten. And Seymour was right, and he's got away with it. Without him, who would have done that in that government? Who's that person that's stripping the money out like that? I think it's a huge moment. Ashley?
No, I agree. I'm just finding it interesting that between the three of us, we've covered all three of them, and the coalition, which is surprising. If you'd asked me before this podcast, I would have said that it would have been a whole range of other people. Yeah, look, I agree with you. I don't share a lot of Seymour's politics. He's too far to the right for me. But in the treaty principles bill is a good example where he hasn't read the room.
Totally.
But in general terms, I think you're right. He's the problem he's got, of course, is he's up against the old warhorse campaigner Winston Peters, so he's always going to look like a sort of a slow second compared to the other coalition partners. But yeah, he's done well.
Loser of the year, Rawdon?
It's really easy. If I could just rather than defining an individual, I could possibly just go to a group. I mean, Te Pāti Māori have to be loser of the year. I mean, on so many levels. I mean, they're basically disintegrated between. Their AGM was yesterday.
Debacle.
And again, it was another debacle. So the latest is Kapa King is back in. Ferris isn't. Tamahiri's still holding on as president when people don't really want him there. You've got these really bright young politicians, Maipa Clark and Orini Kaipara, who I think will probably, I don't know, will they go off with
this is the problem.
Kapakini and start a new Māori party?
I
don't know. We don't know where they're going. But there's no doubt when it comes to our parliament that the Te Pāti Māori are the losers of the year.
Ashley?
So I've got two runners-up. For similar reasons to Rawdon, one of whom is Te Pāti Māori and the other one of which is the Green Party, and that is because they haven't recognised that they are no longer protest movements. And, when you look at, but particularly with the Māori Party, and you look at Peter Sharples and Tariana Turia, and you compare that to the shambles of what you've got in that party now and what they could be achieving on behalf of their people versus what they're actually achieving, it's just a joke. But my loser of the year, my worst performer, quite clearly, actually, once I sat down and did a bit of analysis on this, is Paul Goldsmith. And I wonder whether Paul Goldsmith actually knows what party he's in, because when I look at what he's achieved, particularly around broadcasting, around the portfolio that he holds there, with what's happened with the BSA versus the platform, which is a joke, which is the guy simply not reading the room, which is around what's happened with Radio New Zealand and TVNZ, which are both seriously in need of editorial reform. And so what did he do? He said, do your own review. They did their own review and came back and said, we're saints. Basically, instead of actually, again, reading the room, listening to what a significant proportion of national supporters are actually saying and doing something to deal with that, he's basically ignored it and left them to their own devices. And just media regulation in general, at first he said he wasn't going to regulate. Then he said, I'm going to dust off what Labour had said it was going to do, which sent a mixed message. The guy has sent all the wrong messages. I don't know whether Luxon's proposing to do a reshuffle over Christmas or in the new year, as most prime ministers do, but that's a position he must change and put somebody in there who's actually capable.
You've been really consistent on that and strong on that too. My loser of the year is one person. He's outside of Parliament. He's not an MP, but he's a former MP. It's John Tamahiri. As a single guy, this is a guy that took over this party, made it his own fiefdom, and he's completely stuffed it up in 12 months. He went from having the hikoi, like tens of thousands of people marching in a movement, every politician wants that, down to Wellington. And by the end of the year, he's expelled 2 MPs. One's come back through the court. The whole thing's a disaster. They put their finger. They basically gave New Zealand the one-fingered salute, and he will get what he wishes, and that's all over. I think these guys are absolutely obliterated from the New Zealand political scene, and I blame him and the way he's run the place. He's the biggest loser to me. Any offences taken?
And when we link. Yeah, well, when we link, so something which you mentioned, Asher, when you look back to the to the leadership days gone by with of Māori Party. God, my brain's just gone. But even more recently than that, Te Urura Flavel, who by and large probably is the heart and soul of Māori politics, or has been for the last 5 years or so. He didn't even go to the AGM yesterday, and he used the term disillusioned. Now, that's probably one of the most popular Māori politicians there is, and yet he's not even going to go near it. As far as Tamahiri goes, I think he's just always, and this is long before he took over to Pāti Māori, he's always been in it for himself. First and foremost, the whole way through, every single role he's played in every single organisation, he's been in it for himself to get as much out of it as he possibly can. And this has maybe come up its time.
Do you know what I found funny?
Choice, Duncan.
Do you know what I find funny about that, Rawdon, is that when Flavel became leader of the Māori Party, he was seen as radical and extreme relative to the previous leadership. And you look at him now, and you're absolutely right. He's a moderate.
Flavel, he always was, though. He was in the parliamentary rugby team, and we played a few games with him, and it became pretty clear that he was just one of those guys that you became mates with in the rugby team. It didn't matter whether he was Māori, Pākehā, Samoan. He's just one of those. He was a good guy, and he was pretty mild. He was. Tariana Turia was the radical. That's the irony. Anyway, no, I think those guys collapse. Now, I'm not sure whether this is the last one or not. If it is, and I'll work this out, I'll go across to my team of thousands and we'll talk about it. But if it is, you guys have been wonderful, and I want you back next year. So I'll double your fee. How's that? Yeah, but
hang on, a couple of minutes while we laugh.
You're gonna laugh for 2 minutes, but there may be another one to do before we go. It might be I might do a predictions one as well. Like look ahead to next year. We'll make 10 predictions each or something. Before we go, Rawdon, any activity in the weekend, or is it still dead? Still no.
Oh no, it's quiet. My real estate side, I think, is quietened off massively. I mean, it's weird. We're sort of treading water a bit, because all we're really trying to do at the moment is start looking to build some business to get us back into 2026. We've still got a few listings here at this end, which there's a little bit of activity on, but no, I think New Zealand is shut, particularly with this weather change. The weather we're
shutting down, aren't we?
Like, let's just
yeah,
shut
I agree.
Let's just have a couple of weeks. Let's
but I think New Zealand might be shut for the next 2 months.
Yeah, I reckon. Well, if we get this long hot summer, it's going to be pretty good. But yeah, I no, not much on my end, but I'm always open for business. 0274.
Ashley, watch out for low-hanging branches, okay?
Yeah. It's too late. I'm with Rawdon. It's been a tough, not just 1 year. It's been a tough 3 or 4 years. So it's going back to 2021 for most Kiwis. There's still lots of green shoots at the moment. There's lots of reasons to be more positive and optimistic. There's lots of good things happening. There's kind of a delayed impact of some of the stuff that seems to be feeding through, not just the economy but the country in general. But I am feeling cautiously positive, cautiously optimistic. But yeah, just tough time. And I think we should absolutely, because I make the mistake of reading some of the comments on this podcast from time to time. But yeah, and there's a lot of anger still out there from people, and so I just think it's important that we recognise that we do actually understand these are tough times for people.
People like you though, Ashley. If you keep reading those comments, you'll find keep reading. Hey, from me, a huge thanks, and I'll talk to you individually afterwards anyway, but knowing me, there's probably one more in it. There's probably one more that we'll do a look towards next year. But from today, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, and that is us, folks. Appreciate you watching the podcast, following the podcast. You can subscribe, of course, for $7.99 a month. You text my name, Duncan, to 3598. I'll flick you the link. And you go from there. Really appreciate your support. You supporting us in that way helps us stay in the market, helps us stay on air. Without your support, no guarantees, sorry. But thank you so much for your support so far. That is us. Thank you to my producers, Brody, Lockie. Awesome, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you for everything you do. Remember, life is no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out and enjoy it. And thank you so much for your support. Merry Christmas. Take care. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.